Hey guys, come on in. Come on in. I want you to meet someone. This is Christina Nichols. We're sitting here and we are looking at data. She started on our campus 13 years ago and now she is no longer teaching, but she is an instructional coach and she is doing great things on our campus. This addresses something that is so important, and that is this. How do you retain the very best teachers on your campus? 13 years in education, 13 years right here at Savannah. We're going to talk about that this Saturday on Inside the Principal's Office, and I want to invite you to join me and my co-host, Charles Williams, as we discuss retaining the very best. Join us on all of School Rubric's social media platforms.
Hey, it's Charles Williams from Inside the Principal's Office. Now, I'm sure you've heard that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. The truth is, it's greener where you water it. And the same goes for our staff and our schools. If we want them to be healthy, if we want them to thrive, then we need to put in the work. So recently we talked about how to identify top teaching talent. This week, we're going to talk about how do we retain them. So join me and my co-host, Michael McWilliams, along with our guests for some practical tips and strategies about keeping that best talent. I hope to see you there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever time it is when you are watching this. Welcome to Inside the Principal's Office. I am so happy that you are joining us once again. I cannot tell you how much I enjoy doing this show. I woke up super early this morning just because I couldn't wait. So welcome. I hope that you enjoy yourself. I hope that you get something out of this. Welcome to School Rubric. School Rubric is an organization, a network of podcasts, of web shows, even a magazine that is intended to connect and amplify the voices of educators from all over the world. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass it over to, I got so excited. I didn't even say who I am. For those of you who don't who am I this morning? Welcome to the show. My name is Charles Williams. I am one half of the show. Well, technically one quarter because we have some amazing guests, but one half of the co-hosting team. So I'm going to pass it over to Michael McWilliams, my co-host, phenomenal educator, leader out of Denton, Texas. Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Charles, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. I learn something from you every time we are together, and I am excited today to be with this panel because I know that I am going to learn. Y'all know that I have an Inside the Principal's Office little black book. I have it open. I have my pen, and I am ready to learn. It's going to be a great day today as we discuss a topic that is so very important. We started this conversation a little while ago when we started talking about recruiting the very best to our campus. We know that the number one indicator of student success is the teacher that we select to put in front of kids every single day. So we talked about those strategies to identify the very best. Today, we're going to continue that dialogue, and we're going to talk about once we get the very best in our schools, how do we keep them there? How do we retain them? Such a robust conversation with Veronica and Dan. And today we're going to go a step further talking about retention. And we are so glad to have Dr. Cox all the way from Lima, Peru, and Jerrod all the way from Wyoming. Thank y'all for being here today. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Just introduce yourselves to our audience. Dr. Cox?
Oh, yes, I'm Ann Cox. I'm here in Lima, Peru. I'm a mid-pandemic mover. I have never met my entire staff here in Lima, Peru at Colegio Roosevelt. Prior to this, I was in Spain, in Valencia, Spain for 4 years, and before that in Wisconsin and Rio de Janeiro. So I love the principalship. I love school improvement, and retention of staff is something very near and dear to me. Thank you for having me on the show.
Jerrod, can I just say really quick before you start? I love, Ann, how you're like Brazil, Spain, Peru, Wisconsin. Like, yeah, just throw Wisconsin in there.
Which one of these is not like the other?
Just go ahead, Jerrod. I'm sorry. I just had to jump in. I was like, that's interesting.
No, it's true. I should have gone first because it doesn't sound as cool. I'm in Evanston, Wyoming, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, right. That's about it. Total. Evanston, Wyoming, been here for about this is my 6th year as the elementary school principal here. We have about 500 students. We're a Title I school, and began our professional learning community journey about 5 years ago as well. And just last year was recognized as a model PLC, and what a big honor. And kudos just to our staff, right? So I've been a principal for 9 years now, middle school and elementary level, and just excited to get to connect with some of you and to have some fantastic dialogue on retention of your high quality teachers.
Well, Jerrod, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here along with Dr. Cox. I'm excited for this episode. So for those of you who are new to the show, welcome. And just so you understand, we have 2 wonderful, wonderful questions, but we are always welcome and open to having questions from you. Make sure that as you are watching, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you just want to say hi, make sure that you drop that in the chat. We love the feedback from our guests. So we have those 2 questions. We're going to talk about those. At the very end, one of my favorite parts, we have ideas that stick, some practical things that you could walk away with today that you could apply tomorrow or Monday, whenever it is that you're back in the building. So inside the principal's office, just so you're aware, is intended. We started this just a couple of months ago, and it has really blossomed. And we are excited for what it is becoming because it is a space, a safe space for educational leaders to come together, to grow, to network, and to meet up and to have these conversations that we normally don't get to have because, well, you know, they often say that leadership is lonely, but I always say it's only lonely if you're doing it wrong. So welcome to Inside the Principal's Office. So we have our first question ready to go. It is coming from Aviva Levin, the host of Lesson Impossible podcast, a good friend of mine. So let's see what she has to ask us this morning.
I'm Aviva Levin of Seattle, Washington, and I'm the host of Lesson Impossible, an exploration of educational innovation. Let's talk about this idea of staff members having a voice in the building and not an echo of the principal or the leadership team. What opportunities do you give to your staff so that their voice is heard, ideas are shared, and ultimately they feel a part of the decision making?
This is a great question. The part that I love the most is that they're not simply an echo of the principal in the building, but that their own unique voices are being amplified. Love this question. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Dr. Cox, I'm going to throw it over to you first.
Thank you for this question. I do appreciate it, the quality of it because it gets to the heart of teacher retention, I believe. So there's 5 things that I regularly do as part of just my regular practice. One of those is, if we don't have it already in the school, to ensure that there's a distributive leadership structure. So in my current school, for instance, I have subject area leader teams that meet regularly, grade level teams that meet regularly. And then we do a couple of critical things. We construct the agendas together. So we're not just talking about things that I want to talk about, but they're bringing items to the table that they feel are important to talk about. We do pretty serious check-ins to see how are they doing with their teams? What did their teams need? And then being very careful about the process for those discussions, particularly virtually. It has been important to ensure that the process allows for all voices to be heard, because no matter what the team, whether it's a leadership team or a teacher team, there's always this inequity of voices, people who want to speak first, people who want to speak loud and long. And so being attentive to those processes, using Jamboards, using the different kinds of methodologies to just ensure that equity. Secondly, and these things are shorter, but I do a personal check-in, a short check-in with every staff member every semester. It's been easy on Zoom, and it's been essential because I've not met, my staff. I can't run into them at the cafe. So 10 to 15 minute check-ins individually to make sure that I'm understanding what's going on in their lives. I have an admin drop-in every week. Sometimes people want to talk to you, but they don't necessarily want to schedule an appointment, and they maybe want to come with a friend. They don't want to always somebody comes. So just a standing admin drop-in every week. And then being committed to listening. she mentions in her question, how are staff heard? Well, they're heard by listening, and it's not always easy for us to do. Sometimes people are saying something and I don't even want them to finish because it's like, it's not correct. It's grating on me, and just disciplining ourselves to listen, to empathize, to understand. It's really among the harder things to do. And then the final thing is giving credit for those other ideas that come forward. Mm-hmm. So that people can see, oh, that was so-and-so's idea. That was Jessica's idea. And when they see that these ideas are being heard and being implemented, then more ideas will come.
And you have some great points, giving an opportunity not only for people to share, but recognizing those contributions is huge. I've been doing that with my staff, and you're absolutely right, because now it's like, oh, wait, he's going to recognize me for my efforts. I'm going to be more apt to contribute. So I love those. Jerrod, what do you have to add?
Well, I love that, Dr. Cox. That's really good. And not only, I'd piggyback off of that, not only if you fail to recognize the contributions of your staff, you can lose trust, right? And it's really hard for them to want to come in and have those conversations when you in the first place. So never, ever taking credit for things that staff do and acknowledging them is fantastic. I just agree. We hear the open door policy at all times, and I think I want to take it one step further. It's not only open in my office, it's revolving. I mean, there's kind of a joke in the office. It's a large staff. There's about 100 between certified and support at my school. And it's truly next to joke about it, taking a number, taking a ticket, and not in a bad way, but it's all day long. There's constantly people in the office, and I like it that way. I know that sounds crazy, and I'm trying to get things done. But I do like that staff feel like they can come in and have those conversations. I think we're all focused right now, though, is elevating teachers' voices in authentic ways through big idea number 2 in a professional learning community. And that truly is a collaborative culture, and being able to discuss things openly and understanding what consensus means, that all voices in the room have been heard. The will of the group is made evident, even to those who oppose it. And then you got to move forward. And that's how a lot of voices are elevated or are heard. I support the decisions that are made when my staff or my teacher teams come to me, because I know they've done it collaboratively. Or I ask them, have you come to consensus? Is this something that your team wants to do? And when they have, I know they've done it with our pillars in mind. And we know the pillars of a model professional learning community, what those are. And we have our vision of every student every day, our mission to ensure high levels of learning for all students. We have collective commitments that help us to realize and achieve that mission and vision, SMART goals that are based on individual teachers, grade level collaborative teams that fall in line with our school goals. I know that if they're coming to me, they've taken those things in mind. And if I have to ask them about that, that's good too. I want to give, this is from Todd Whitaker, about what great principals do differently. And he says, you have to give your best, most talented teachers that platform for their voices to be elevated. That never means you don't listen to all staff, but elevate your best superstar teachers' voices. Make sure that they have an opportunity to share, because they'll always have those pillars, the mission, the vision, right at the forefront of their brains. I have many staff who are high achievers, and my superstars, what I would call them, those go-getters. It's almost comical how frequently teams come to me, though, and they use the lingo of the definition of a PLC, which educators working collaboratively with recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. And the reason I bring that up is we all have district pacing guides, district expectations, and they want to know, do I have permission to get off the pacing guide, to get off the path a little bit? Well, if it's what's best for students, for sure. So Jerrod, we took some action research here, and this is what we've decided to do. And then they share that with the staff, why they rearranged or reorganized some things. And so it's important, from guiding coalition down to grade level teams, as Dr. Cox said, to department level teams, that they have a voice, they feel like their voice is heard. Again, I go back to focusing on that collaborative culture and coming to consensus.
Yeah. Collaboration. I think that's what we've heard time and time again, is collaboration. And when you look at the question is, how do they have their voices heard? I think that the most important thing as administrators is we have to remember that it's not just getting input. I've been a principal administrator for 21 years, and there was a point in my career where it was get the survey data, let them have their voice, and then from what they tell me, come back to them and say, as a result, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. But I think that it is very important for their voice to be heard throughout the entirety of the process. So it's not just identifying what needs work, but again, it is that collaborative opportunity to identify this is what needs work. And since teachers are the ones that are on the front lines, the closest to the work of educating our kids, their voice must also be included in developing the systems. This is what we need to do. And so now my voice is also important, not just saying what we need, but my voice is important on being able to identify what are the steps we're going to take? What are we going to do? What does this look like in practice? This is great. We have a question from the audience. How can trust and respect be restored when it has been lost? How can trust and respect be restored when that is lost? Because what we're really talking about is administrators have to trust and respect teachers. Teachers have to trust and respect administrators. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit. Jerrod, I think you just talked about getting off of a pacing guide. We didn't plan for this, but let's have this conversation with Brenda. How, Brenda? How do y'all think? Brenda wants to know, how can we restore that trust when it's been broken?
I'm happy to speak to this. You can't brush past it. I think you have to lean into it, and with humility, you have to understand where it was broken, and then you have to be, I hate to say it because it's almost sounding cliche, but just real vulnerable and say, I understand I broke your trust in this way, and I don't think you can ever brush past an event that broke trust.
And I also think when we talk about this collaborative community that it really takes to educate our kids, the way that you build trust is by consistently doing what you say that you're going to do. I told you that I'm going to show up, and I told you I was going to do this, and bam, I was there. So usually that break in trust is when someone has compromised an agreement. So the other thing that you have to understand is that it takes time to rebuild trust. It takes time for that to be restored. And so everyone involved has to commit to see the good intentions of the others as they do the work that it will take to restore that. Great conversation this morning already, and I already have so many notes from this morning. I'm learning from you all because y'all are so smart. Let's move into question number 2. Question number 2 comes from Michael Fulton, and he's someone right here in the state of Texas.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Fulton, and I am an assistant principal in Louisville ISD. Accountability can sometimes be the elephant in the room. Balancing a wide range of talent on a campus can be difficult, especially with a wide range of experience levels. As a leader, how do you hold your staff accountable and provide equity to not only students, but teachers also?
Excellent. Very excellent question. Jerrod, do you want to take first stab at this?
Yeah, you bet. I tend to find that culture and climate really define everything that you do, and that's your common thread that goes through it all. And when you talk about both of those, they're very distinct and very different. And our climate is how we feel, right? It's warm, it's sunny outside, or it's cold and it's windy. What does it feel like in the building? Culture is how we behave. It's our attitudes, it's our dispositions. You can't have a warm and fuzzy climate when your behaviors are dysfunction junction. You can only fake it till you make it for so long. So that culture has to be addressed if you want a positive, healthy, warm, fuzzy climate, right? And therefore, I believe culture trumps climate. Culture has to be in place and interwoven into everything that you do. It eats systems, structures. It eats breakfast, dinner, lunch, all that, right? It does. Now, culture is that driving force or that red thread behind everything that you do, and it connects everything that you do. And the principal, the leader, is responsible for the climate and the culture in the school. And I have to understand that if I want that positive change in my school, it's up to me. And when I say leadership, yes, maybe starts with the principal, but there's distributed leadership. And I think Dr. Cox touched on that, but distributing leadership amongst your staff, that's where it starts. Effective principals look in the mirror, right, and leaders, and say, what do I do to help this change, to help improve our culture. It's really a myth as well, I think, with culture, to think it takes years to change the culture in your school. It's not easy, but if you have what it takes, I think you can change culture pretty quickly. Goes back to, how do you repair some trust that's been broken? What's too bad is if you're consistent, as Max said, and you do all those right things, all it takes is one time, unfortunately, human nature, right, to lose trust. And then it takes a long time to build it back, and trust adds to culture, right? So it's making sure you're consistent, making sure that you're doing the things that you say that you're going to do, that you're being kind. I've often found that in really toxic schools, unfortunately, those buildings, the leadership has probably done a pretty poor job in making the work crystal clear to staff. If we're not crystal clear about the work, I think their frustration gets amplified. Sometimes more PD and training can help, but sometimes I feel like you just got to get lost in the work, and you just got to go to work. If we just talk about culture and what it feels like, and let's all play nice in the sandbox, while all those things are important, sometimes just getting to work can take care of those things. Having clarity in the work precedes competence. Got to be crystal clear about it. One last thing, if it's okay, that I'd like to share. I just read Time for Change by Dr. Anthony Muhammad, Luis Cruz, and phenomenal. And they talk about 4 things that you must have, that they really elevate. I don't think they call them pillars. I can't remember. But these 4 things, number 1 is the cognitive investment. It's the why, communicating the rationale. And to me, that's heart and it's mind. Teachers have to know, has to resonate with them in their hearts and their minds why they're doing this work. And then if they understand that why, it's how. Well, okay, I get it. But what are the nuts and the bolts? The how. And then you start building capacity, becoming crystal clear with staff about this is the process. And then there's the emotional investment. And I think sometimes that can be the issue. That's the who. It's establishing trust. Do they not trust the leadership? Do they not trust the guiding coalition? Are there trust issues on their team in and of itself? And then if you've done all of those things, you can expect a return on your investment, right? You can expect that you're going to see results out of your students. And I understand that great principals, full well know that their primary obligation is to students in the school. It's not to the adults. My first priority is always the kids. Adults are second. They're a close second, but they're still second place. It's always a focus on the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to, no, go ahead, Matt. I was going to pass it over to Dr. Cox.
Well, Jerrod, I'm amazed at your answer. You hit on all of the points that I wanted to make. So everything I'm saying is going to be a slight repackage of what you have said. And I'm starting with kicking it off with culture. Culture is absolutely, I think, the ramp for accountability. And so the culture of accountability is where I start our journey. How do we collectively hold each other accountable? Because if your accountability structure is top down, that can be quite dangerous actually in building culture. So a couple of ways that I do that, that systems that I've worked in have done that effectively, is one through adaptive schools, for instance, a way to, processes to make sure that we are holding each other accountable, that we're getting all the voices in the room, we're hearing each other, we have ways to make decisions that are clear, and we have basic expectations to which we hold each other accountable. An example of creating, taking that even further and creating some rubrics to help us to hold each other accountable is a rubric that I had shared earlier. If he wants to put it in the chat, if Wallace can put it in the chat. This is something that was created within a team. Just, how do we define highest functioning? Just having those conversations about how, not us, we're talking about a high functioning team. We did some reading together. We identified some of these things within the team. And on the second page, the items beyond the team. Teams can't function on a high level within a vacuum. They need behind them those strong systems and structures that Jerrod referred to. So you need both of those things. in order to have that culture of accountability. In addition, supporting growth through a strength-based model of accountability, where you are helping people to grow. You're not trying to, caught you doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. You're always starting, like we do with students, with what's going well. And then creating and being careful about those conversations initially, at least, creating more of a dialogue about those areas for growth. And that support, that's an excellent opportunity to build trust. If you help somebody, all teachers want to improve their practice, all teachers I've met anyway. So if you help them to improve their practice, automatically you're building more trust. That said, there are going to be times when you need to have those difficult conversations that also can actually add to your culture of accountability, because high functioning teachers want to know that there are processes for building people up, for supporting them, for mutual accountability, but they also want to know that people will be called on things when there are, if somebody continually interrupts a meeting, if they dominate, if they don't uphold the agreements, if you violate the agreements, there have to be, again, respectful. It's never going to be rude, but it has to be clear that there is accountability at the end of the day.
So there are some amazing ideas. I don't even know what else to add. So I'm going to dig deep here and pull something out, because you guys have shared some impressive things. I want to share this idea of, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with a group called Kagan, but they have something called Kagan Pies, where they talk about for their groups, which takes it beyond just group work. And I actually try to apply this same principle to my teachers and my staff on my building. And you talked a little bit about this idea that we all hold each other accountable. So the first part of that is this positive interdependence, right? We all need one another if we're going to be successful. In fact, I just had a meeting with my staff yesterday, and this is something that I mentioned to them. Like, we are successful together. Like, none of us are successful individually. So that accountability piece definitely, right, relies on one another. And in fact, I tell my staff right away, right, they have principal permissions at the beginning of the year. And one of the things I say, hold me accountable. If I fail as your leader, I need you to tell me. And recently I had a staff member come into my office and said, look, like, I am unhappy with your leadership. So the fact that she felt comfortable enough to say that to me, and not to feel afraid of being reprimanded, but instead for me to say, what can I do better? How can I grow as a leader for you, right? This is this idea that we all have to be held accountable. So we have this kind of core group of points that we are all held accountable to. But then on the other side, we understand that teachers are individuals. So one of the things that I do with my teachers is that I make sure that they're accountable to themselves. So at the beginning of the year, we set goals. Teachers, they say, this is what I want to get better at. And then we create these portfolios to show their growth in those areas. I'm not comparing you to the teacher across the hallway or the teacher in another district. I want to know, how are you getting better as an educator for your students, and how are you growing as an educator? So in that way, we try to hold accountability for all. We have standards that we're all meeting, but also individually. How are you growing? How are you addressing those individual talents, those strengths, and those weaknesses? So thank you for all of yours, Mac. I know that we are getting to the end of this question, so I'm curious to hear what you do down in Texas.
Well, I think the point that I really want to bring out, what really resonates with me, is our show topic is retention, and just listen to what we've talked about. Let's just say this very directly. We talked about collaboration, giving teacher voices, and now we're talking about accountability. The way that you retain teachers is by creating an environment that they don't want to leave. We cannot control, as leaders, we can't control compensation. We cannot control how much the district is paying toward insurance. We cannot control any of those things in Dallas, Fort Worth area. You know, you can drive 30 miles and you have access to 4 or 5 districts that you can apply and you can work on in. So I don't think that it's the compensation packages that will help us retain teachers, but it is exactly the things that we're talking about today. It's that holding each other accountable. It is, if I am working hard, I don't want the person next to me to be able to come in late and just do whatever and still get celebrated. I think that that is so very important. So when we talk about accountability on our campus, it is not I do. Again, like Dr. Cox said, it can't be I do top down, but it has to be we do. We hold each other accountable. We have collective commitments. We've said what we're going to do to make sure that every kid every day learns. And on my campus, I always say at the end of the day, every kid should be one day closer to the thing that they say they want to be when they grow up. And that is our reflection question. Did I ensure that every kid in my class got one day closer to the thing that they want to be when they grow up? And it is this sense of accountability. And as a leader, I think that I have to model that if something goes on with the teacher, everybody in the building knows when a teacher's doing something that we have not agreed upon. And you better believe everybody's watching to see how you're going to respond. And I found, don't send the email to the entire staff about please make sure you're on time to work when everybody knows it's the same 3 people that's late every day. It's the same 3 people. Why are you emailing the entire staff? And it's just little things like that. That, John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. It's little things like that make a difference in the culture and the climate of our schools. And that's how we keep the best teachers in our schools, by creating an environment where their voices are heard and where they know their work is going to be honored, and they know that what we say we're going to do, everyone is going to be held accountable to what we say we're going to do. And then you begin to see teachers holding each other accountable. Yeah,
absolutely. Jerrod, were you about to share?
No, I agree. John Wayne says courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. I mean, we have to have those conversations with teachers and not flock shot when a flock shot is not needed. Teachers want to know that you'll have the courage to do that. You can't let people who drag their feet in whatever way that looks like from making a difference for kids. So just agree with what everybody said. You have to have those difficult conversations. It's all about growing them. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to grow, if they're not going to drink the Kool-Aid and buy in, we're going to have some difficult conversations with staff. And I'm sure we've all had those.
And difficult conversations are difficult conversations. They are difficult to have. The other thing that I found, I'll say this and then I know we need to move on, is it's very important as we end the year, think about how you're going to start your year, leaders out there. I have found that I begin every year by laying out very clearly. I take my strengths and this is my leadership style. This is what our staff is about. And I lay all of that out. That helps me throughout the year, because when I have to have a difficult conversation, it can feel kind of personal if it's just you did this and I need to have this conversation. But if you set up your year that these are the expectations, and remember, these are our agreed upon, our collective commitments. This is what this school is about. This is how we're moving forward. When you have to have that difficult conversation, you anchor that conversation in the expectations at the beginning of the year. So it's all about expectations. It's not about what you did. It's about what we said we would do. And let's unpack what you did and see how that's different than what we agreed upon. That makes a difficult conversation, which is difficult for us to have. That's what I want teachers to understand today. It's difficult for us to have difficult conversations. It is, but we have to. It is easier if we anchor it in expectations rather than the personal, this is something you did or didn't do.
Can I share that, Mac? They're difficult too, and I have to say, I love that I'm in a call with someone from the Wild West and we're talking about John Wayne. I think that's just about perfect. Right. But the conversations are difficult because they're also dangerous. And I think the comparison I make is to a classroom. Let's say that there's a student who's challenging a teacher in the classroom. That teacher may be absolutely the perfect teacher for 24 kids in that classroom. But if that 25th child is having a behavior problem and the how she interacts with that child can make or break the culture of the whole classroom. It can instill fear in the others also. Right. And so how you have the difficult conversation, is it respectful? Did people still feel respected, or did they feel disrespected in that process? It has a tremendous impact on culture.
Absolutely. So some amazing ideas, some amazing thoughts, amazing feedback. So I want to say thank you for everything that you have shared thus far, which brings us into our ideas that stick. So maybe something already stuck for you. Maybe you already had that takeaway, but we are going to now share, each of us, just one thing that we really want you to be able to walk away with, our ideas that stick, something that we love. So I'm going to kick mine off. And this is something that I truly believe in, of having consistent, differentiated appreciation. If you don't know, I'm sure you've heard of 5 love languages. The same thing could be applied to work. It is the languages of appreciation. Not all of your staff, not all of the people in your building want to be appreciated in the same way. And so we have to be cognizant of that, because I used to be that leader, right? I used to be I'm going to give gifts to everybody. And some people are like, I don't want a gift. I just want to be heard. I want to be valued. I just want you to spend some time with me so I can talk to you, right? So make sure you understand who's in your building and how do they want to be appreciated. And so be consistent with that. So I'm going to pass it over to Ann. Ann, go ahead.
I think that's so important, Charles, because as leaders, we always are looking toward improvement. But if you don't take a step back first and look at what's going well, then you run the risk of moving into negativity. So my idea that stick is, and I've been part of merit-based systems where we've tried to acknowledge teachers, pay them a lot, do all kinds of things to retain them. We had specific task force in some of my schools on retention. And really, at the end of the day, my experience tells me that it's about trust and collaboration. That is where teachers want to be. That's where they feel they can comfortably grow, where they can work together and have the best outcomes for their students and their work together, their lifelong professional relationships and friendships that they make with each other. That's part of the culture of the school. So my big idea is, of course, money is helpful, but it is not what is going to keep people there at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Jerrod.
Yeah, it's all about effective leadership. The number one predictor of job satisfaction is the quality of the immediate supervisor. I have to understand that I set the tone for my school. I don't have to be the sage on the stage. It's not all about me, but I set the tone for the school. The best principals, I think they're just able to be a beacon of light, and that's not easy because we're asked to do it every day, but it's essential that we do it. One of the key responsibilities I have is to create that positive atmosphere, to praise my staff, to praise them in authentic ways. The difference between, I think, more effective principals and less effective ones, it's not what they know. We all have the degrees. We have some experience. It's what they do, and it's what they do every day that sets them apart. And I think that's what then sets certain schools apart from other schools. Great principals, great leaders, they establish their core beliefs, their expectations, their non-negotiables. They walk the walk. They're transparent. They support their teachers, but they also then hold those accountable to those expectations in loving and caring ways. They support the consistency of the pillars of their school. The most effective way to impact the culture is a positive ways to remain steadfast and consistent in how we do business. And we talk about that all the time at our school. It's just how we do business, guys. And we all know what that business of education looks like in our school. People don't just quit their jobs. If we're talking about retention and what's the thing that sticks, they don't just quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. And I know that sometimes that's tough to realize, but it's true. They quit their bosses. And effective principals, we just don't forget that it's the people, it's not the programs that determine the quality of a school. That field of dreams, if you build it, they will come. And I've seen that. I've seen good teachers want to transfer into my building before, because it's something that we do. It's how we do business here. If you want to retain your superstar teachers, be a superstar leader, create a positive and a healthy culture. You have to get out there. You have to win each day, every day, and you got to make it happen.
Absolutely, Jerrod. I couldn't help but think when you were like, they quit bosses, right? It's like that breakup. It's like, it's not you, it's me. No, it's definitely you. It's definitely you. So Mac, close us out.
Jerrod, right there in my black book, that was my talking point. We have such a connection. People quit their bosses. They quit their bosses. They quit environments that's filled with chaos. That's what they quit. They don't quit their job. They go find somewhere else where they can do it. So what I would say, my ideal that stick is you have to identify what kind of boss you want to be. And I say, don't be a boss, be a teacher. be to teachers what we expect them to do for kids, not just focus on content, but focus on the whole child. We have to make sure that we are a teacher of teachers and that our kids, our teachers, which are our kids, our students, that they are healthy. Anything healthy will grow. So let's look at them holistically. Let's make sure that we are growing them, and let's model. If I want you to do it for kids, you should be able to see me in some form doing it for you. If SEL is important for kids, it's important for teachers, and I have to make sure that you are the benefactor of the same strategies that I'm saying is important for you to do for kids. If you're the benefactor of it, you're going to be more apt to do it, see the results of it, and reproduce it in your classroom.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, I'm going to have to say LaQuanta may disagree with you about not being a boss. So we hear LaQuanta, but your boss is a whole nother thing. So we recognize you.
That's a little different.
So before we wrap up here, I just want to say, first of all, thank you again for everybody for joining us today, for our wonderful guests. Make sure that if you are watching this, if you enjoyed what you saw today, and if you aren't already, make sure that you join our Facebook group. See, this is great. We get together for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes here, and we talk, but we want the conversation to continue. So make sure that you join the Facebook group, extend that conversation, drop questions, participate in these discussions. Make sure that you are part of this, because it is not a one-way street. We want to engage. We want to interact with you. And don't forget, School Rubric has a lot of things going on, so please make sure that you join us on April 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Educators Without Borders as they discuss disrupting education. I love this one. I cannot wait, because if not now, then when? It is time. It is time. So make sure that you join that conversation. Mac, take us away.
I want to end this broadcast by thanking Jerrod and Dr. Cox. Y'all have been phenomenal. But I also want to thank those of you who are watching online. Melissa, thank you so much for your comments today and for being engaged. I have several staff members on here. Thank you, Ms. Dixon, Ms. Nichols, Ms. Pedalick. Hey, here's one of my parents.
Oh, Mac froze.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. You really make a difference. Thank you for bringing question today. You help steer and drive the conversation. And that's what the post office is all about. It's for leaders, aspiring leaders. It's for teachers that want to understand principles better. Thank you for being a part of this community. Our next Inside the Principal's Office is Saturday, May the 1st at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we want you to join us. And you know what? I want you to come back May the 1st, because we've been working on something for you. I want you to imagine in your mind one of those, what are those GIFs? GIFs? I'm kind of old. I think it's a
GIFs,
whatever. I want you to think about one of those where it's like the little things that's spinning and saying, loading. We have something for you that's loading, and we're going to give you some more information about it at our next Inside the Principal's Office. I'm going to tell you, it has something to do with in-person meetings. It has something to do with Dallas, Texas, and the month of July. Loading, come back so we can share it with you.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, our guests. Thank you for our viewers. We will see you next time.
This is so much fun.
Guys.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. See you May 1st for sure. I'll be here.
Yes, May 1st.
Thank you for watching School Rubric on YouTube. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe in order to stay looped in on all of our diverse collection of shows, interviews, panels, tutorials, and more from educators around the globe. And visit us at schoolrubric.com for even more great content, such as our online articles, Interact magazine, featured podcasts, and more. Thank you.